Hello, this is Carson Paul Lee, otherwise known as Frater Ambitheus or Dioplatanus. Um, and this is my video about Elysianism and how and why it requires a certain kind of rejection of the traditional idea of cause and effect. So, excuse me, what if I told you the future has already happened and it's actually the reason for your past? In the world of Elysianism, we throw away the timeline entirely to reveal a reality where outcomes precede their origins. Stop living in a straight line and start seeing the eternal surge. The utter unity and unfalsifiability of all existence, all possibilities, imaginable and unimaginable. As Terence McKenna said, reality is stranger than you can't imagine. The architecture of the eternal now. Many physicists, theoretical, quantum, and dealing in hard Newtonian determinism have come to the radical conclusion that time as we know it is merely an illusion, a biological metaphor for the eternity of beingness parsed into a finite interpretable state. Essentially, this would be a position that, Einstein took, Bohr. I mean, they may not have said that it was infinite, but they said that it was a block of sorts. That the present moment is merely a cross section of what I would call infinity or eternity, and what they would call true reality or actual beingness. Uh, this is a very complicated and very simple kind of thing to imagine, but it's difficult to get through our meat brains, like our skulls, because we live in the present. We feel like time is real, but it may very well not be. I mean, the very substance of being could be the bubbling up and dissipating of parallel realities that are hitherto unknown and are unknowable, um, purely falsifiable, creating an unfalsifiable beingness external to it, internal to our experience. The paraconsistent logic of being. Holding two contradictory truths simultaneously, such as the earth is roundish, say like an oblong sphere, a little flat in the top and bottom, like a oval sort of shape, and a mentally constructed flat earth model may be physiologically / spiritually advantageous, holding utility while not being literally true. So you could look at it as literally true. I just don't recommend that because it's not scientifically verifiable. But ultimately, um, like the round Earth is verified. You can go into space, you can look down, and you can say, "Wow, I spent a lot of money to go up and then back down." Uh, while not being literally true, can create a resonant chamber of one's mind, brain, and consciousness, developing resistance and ease when dealing with cognitive dissonance, as well as allowing the aforementioned resonant Elysian chamber of Pyrrhonist ataraxia by way of engaging in doxastic superposition / panepistemic bivalence. So it's like a step above or a step past Pyrrhonism, wherein you all three suspend judgment on all propositions, disbelieve and believe all propositions, following them through to their logical end state as a feat of mental gymnastics and intellectual / academic rigor. This was what I would call being a good intellectual, being intellectual in general. Uh, it's essentially like, instead of saying, I'm going to debunk this, blah, 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 and then listing off reasons why someone's wrong, you work with them and then you follow through the logical chain of, reasoning and whether it's paraconsistent or uh, binary, non, just conventional consistent logic, and you follow through, say, a conspiracy theory, and you say, well, I think you might be onto something, but let's figure out where this naturally leads and what the resulting steps and actions that we should take as individuals should be given this circumstance. So I'm going to give you two examples. One that's outlandish and probably not true, but more likely than other conspiracy theories. And then another one that is rather silly and not necessarily all that convincing. The consistent, or the more consistent but not necessarily true one, is, say, for instance, Donald Trump, because of the Epstein stuff, had the coronavirus pandemic engineered in a lab as a bioweapon to kill everybody and make the world a techno-fascist pedo world order. I don't believe that, nor do I suggest you should. But this is a lot more logically consistent than saying they're going to put microchips in the vaccine when we carry these around volitionally, with volition, with voluntary agreement and honesty and transparency, and we don't care. We share our application, we share our location with plenty of apps, we share our data with plenty of apps if you do that. So it's more likely that that sort of conspiracy theory happens than the microchip and the vaccine one. And what would be the logical through line and chain of events and actions taken thereof if that were supposedly true? Well, I think that would most likely lead to some kind of anarchist praxis, agricultural activities, homesteading, protecting your children individually. So having a transparent and loving and good relationship with your children, so that you can more effectively communicate with them and know if something's wrong, as well as being willing to take actions into your own hands if and when the necessary events are requiring that. Because I know for a fact if that were the case, the police would not be where you would go for someone saying to your child, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill you and your family and everyone you love and everyone you've ever known. That's not the way to go. You don't go to the police with that. You assassinate them. You assassinate them. Yourself at that. And you'd probably, there's a whole bunch of stuff relating to that. And then there's further logical steps that would follow that, depending on what happens. Yeah. Then the more outlandish conspiracy theory. Oh, I don't know. The moon landing was faked. So you could follow through that and say, well, why would it be faked? Maybe the likelihood of catching cancer from going into space is much higher than we have been led to believe. And that the Soviets and the US, as well as all other space programs, hide that fact so that they can spur on hopes and dreams of the populace for some kind of ulterior motive, whether it's just to make people feel like there's more hope in the world, or I wouldn't say that there would necessarily be a negative connotation to that secret and that conspiracy as well, because if astronauts were to catch cancer much quicker in space than we think, than we officially know through the scientific avenues, then it would be a very reasonable thing to say, send astronauts to the South Pole and then have a rocket launch them into space, or not into space, the upper atmosphere, fake a re-entry, and then land in the ocean. It sounds bonkers, but if that were the case, it would be a lot more legitimate to do something like that than not. Then again, I do believe that in the infinite multiverse, there are certainly worlds where that is the case, and therefore they follow through with this conspiracy, or they don't, and they're transparent about that fact. And this is what I'm talking about as an academic or intellectual rigor, and performing feats of mental gymnastics to strengthen your mind. So now we're going to talk about, now we're going to talk about navigating the fractal surge. Behind this image, behind this right here, I have a E8 lattice. Both of these are E8 lattices. One is a three-dimensional modeling, rendering of the eight-dimensional superstructure, and the other is a two-dimensional rendering of it. What is the form? What this form of infinitude, eternity of multiverses, wherein all potentialities unfold in their allotted causal frames as defined by our limited biological cause and effect temporal perception, looks like, is a highly ordered, confusing situation that I myself have not, nor will I ever most likely be able to fully parse the implications of. Does free will exist? Is everything done already? What the dog doing? Personally, I speculate that all immediate experience, while illusory, is a cross-section of a higher dimensional megastructure as outlined by quantum gravity research, extrapolating an E8 quasi-crystalline lattice structure, these things, on the bottom right and bottom left, or top left, into reality as its ultimate structure, specifically the time-space, space-time model, wherein space-time, what we experience, is only one half of the equation, and the other half is something of the other side. The land of the after death. Our destination of ascending eternally forever, higher and ever higher, with no true end, intersecting this reality again in what many traditions have called reincarnation, but without linear time constraints and the limitation of one life per life. You don't live only once. You do. You live infinitely. And this is me essentially saying, let's stop with the illusion of separation. You know, I'm willing to admit that I am responsible for all of the Epstein files. I'm responsible for every war crime, every crime against humanity. God, even every act of God. Someone gets struck by lightning and dies, put it on me. I'm okay with that. If it makes you feel better, please do. Please do. Because I can't deal with that weight myself. You know what I'm saying? It is a immense weight to bear. It is a immense loneliness to feel. And I just want it to end. You know, I want someone to, myself, I want to hold myself and say, you're all right. I know you're guilty of all this stuff. I know you're innocent, that there is no grace, there is no guilt, but ultimately you are as thou art. I am what I am. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, that's about it. All right. Y'all have a good one.